The hidden reason. Women crave dangerous men. And it's not what you think. Most men believe that to win a woman's heart, they need to be endlessly kind, constantly available, and overly accommodating. But here's the hard truth that rarely gets spoken aloud: being nice is not the same as being attractive. Women aren't craving chaos or cruelty. They're not looking to be hurt. What they are drawn to, often unconsciously, is something deeper, more primal and edge. A man who carries himself with quiet confidence, who walks into a room without needing approval, who exudes calm dominance. That man triggers something visceral in a woman's psychology. It's not about fear in the traditional sense, and certainly not about aggression. It's about presence. It's about a man who could be dangerous, who has the strength, the focus, the capability, but chooses restraint. That selective power, that ability to act but not be ruled by impulse, creates magnetism. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He famously said, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." This isn't a call to become cold or ruthless. It's a reminder that power, true power, is rooted in control. In modern relationships, that means showing up as a man who values himself enough not to beg for attention. A man who protects his time, energy, and emotional bandwidth. Women respond to that not because they want to be dominated, but because they want to feel secure in a man's presence, secure in the sense that he knows who he is, and he won't be swayed by external noise. Being dangerous in this context doesn't mean being hostile. It means having the kind of energy that says, "I'm capable. I'm clear. I don't need you to complete me, but I'm open to building with you." That is irresistible. It's rare. And in a world where so many men are either trying too hard or playing roles they think women want, the man who stands firm in his own frame becomes unforgettable. He doesn't have to chase, explain, or prove. His mere presence speaks louder than words. That's the kind of danger women secretly want, not recklessness, but strength under control. And once you understand this, once you embody it, you stop chasing love and start commanding respect, effortlessly. Most men operate under the belief that the more available and responsive they are, the more desirable they become. But the truth is far more complex and more brutal. In reality, predictability kills attraction. When a woman knows exactly what you'll do, when you'll text, how you'll respond, she stops feeling pulled in. Attraction doesn't thrive in comfort. It thrives in tension, curiosity, and emotional uncertainty. This doesn't mean being manipulative or playing games. It means stepping into your own frame so deeply that your movements are no longer dictated by the need for approval. When you become unpredictable, not erratic but intentional, you create a psychological gap. And in that gap, she begins to lean in. She starts to wonder where you are, what you're thinking, and why you're not flooding her with attention like every other man. It's in that mystery that desire grows. Think about it. When you're texting a woman and the vibe is good, most guys feel the urge to double down. More texts, more compliments, more plans. But what if you did the opposite? What if you slowed down? Not to punish her, but because you're genuinely focused on your work, your goals, your life. That silence, that space you create isn't emptiness. It's weight. It communicates that you have momentum, that your attention isn't cheap, that your life doesn't revolve around anyone else's validation. And she feels that. She senses the difference. You're not avoiding her. You're not cold. But you're not rushing either. And that makes her pause and think about you more than the guy who texts good morning every day at 8:01 a.m. This is what Machiavelli understood when he spoke of power and perception. You don't need to constantly assert yourself to be noticed. You just need to move in a way that makes others unsure of your next step. Uncertainty, when used with integrity, is power. It gives your presence weight. It creates contrast. And that contrast is what most women are missing in modern dating, where everything is too fast, too easy, too available. When you make her feel something unpredictable, a pause, a stretch of silence, a shift in energy, you rewire how she sees you. Not as another man eager to please, but as someone with depth, presence, and control. That's the man who lives rent-free in her mind. Not because he's playing games, but because he plays by a different rhythm, his own. And that rhythm is what makes him unforgettable. In a world where emotional outbursts, overreactions, and performative vulnerability are common, the man who stays calm, who remains grounded regardless of what's happening around him, becomes unforgettable. Emotional control is not about suppression. It's about mastery. And that's what makes a man dangerous in the best way. Because when a man can sit in discomfort without being shaken, when he can respond instead of react, he commands attention without asking for it. In the eyes of a woman, this is magnetic. Why? Because it signals leadership strength and internal stability traits that instinctively make her feel safe and deeply attracted, even if she can't explain why. Women don't just want a man who listens or agrees. They want a man whose presence calms chaos. A man who doesn't panic when plans change, who doesn't spiral when challenged, who doesn't raise his voice just to feel heard. That man, steady, composed, fully in control of himself, stands out without ever trying to. In a moment of tension, most guys break. They argue, they defend, they emotionally fold. But you keep your posture, you hold your tone, maybe you even smile, and in that quiet composure, you say everything you need to. You show her and everyone else that you are the still point in the storm, not another leaf blown around by it. Machiavelli taught that true leaders maintain control while others lose theirs. He believed power wasn't about domination, but about perception, and perception is shaped in moments of pressure. Anyone can seem confident when things are easy. But when emotions rise, when something goes wrong, when she tests you, that's when the real weight of your presence is revealed. A calm man in a heated world becomes a mirror. He reflects strength without aggression. He leads without shouting. He influences without needing to control. Let's bring it into the real world. Imagine you're on a date and something goes wrong. The food's cold. She makes a cutting joke, or there's an awkward silence. Most guys would scramble to fix it or get defensive, but the man with calm power, he lets the moment pass. Maybe he shifts the topic. Maybe he laughs. Maybe he just breathes and stays silent. But what he doesn't do is react like he needs to prove himself. That moment becomes the proof. And she feels it. That's what women respond to. Not the man who talks the most or tries the hardest, but the one who needs nothing from anyone to feel whole. The man who stays centered even when everything around him isn't. In today's world where oversharing is celebrated and validation is often mistaken for connection, the man who keeps some of himself hidden, who guards his intentions, becomes irresistible. Power lies in ambiguity. When you don't rush to label what you are, when you hold back just enough, you create space for mystery. And mystery isn't manipulation, it's magnetism. Women aren't drawn to men who spill everything on the first date, who bend their identity to match hers, or who scramble to define the relationship out of fear of losing her. They're drawn to the man who knows exactly what he wants but doesn't feel the need to announce it. The man who lets things unfold, who gives just enough to spark curiosity but never enough to be completely figured out. That space is where desire grows. Most men rush in. They want to be clear, liked, accepted. So they overexpose their thoughts, their plans, their feelings. But what they don't realize is that when everything is known, nothing is interesting. The dangerous man, the one Machiavelli would admire, plays the long game. Not to deceive, but to protect. Because once people know your every move, your frame is no longer yours. You've given away the leverage. In dating, it looks like this. She asks what you're looking for. Most guys either fumble awkwardly or mirror her answer. But the grounded, strategic man answers with presence and purpose. Something like, I know what I want, but I'd rather see if this connection grows naturally than force it into a label. That kind of answer doesn't close the door. It opens curiosity. Now, instead of being another man trying to fit her mold, you become the mold. She leans in because you're not giving her everything at once. You're letting her feel your depth slowly. And that's rare. That's powerful. Machiavelli taught that a leader should never reveal all his intentions. Not because it's dishonest, but because flexibility is power. When you move with clarity but stay unreadable, you control the narrative without ever needing to dominate it. In life, and especially in relationships, being mysterious isn't about playing hard to get. It's about knowing that your truth doesn't have to be spoken immediately to be real. The man who chooses when and how to reveal himself becomes the one everyone wants to understand, because people chase what they can't easily grasp. And when you hold your cards with calm confidence, she doesn't feel deceived, she feels drawn in. That's not a game. That's influence. Most men make a fatal mistake early in dating. They center the woman instead of their mission. Without even realizing it, they start rearranging their schedule, compromising their goals, and adjusting their focus, all to keep her attention. At first, it may feel like devotion, like care. But underneath it all is a dangerous message. You're more important than the life I'm building. And when a man sends that message too soon, he stops being the leader of his story. He becomes a background character in hers. What women are truly drawn to isn't a man who worships them. It's a man who's already in motion, who's building something bigger than the relationship, and who invites her to witness it, not define it. A man with a mission radiates energy, not the desperate kind that seeks approval, but the grounded presence of someone who's deeply aligned with his purpose. He doesn't cancel plans to be liked. He doesn't drop everything just because she texts. He respects her, yes, but he respects himself more. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. And that clarity is what makes him attractive. When you're deeply committed to your goals, your business, your growth, your evolution, you don't have to say you're high value. She feels it. She sees it in how you protect your time, how you speak about what matters to you, how you never beg for attention, because you already have a direction. You already know where you're going with or without her. Imagine a woman asks, "So what have you been up to lately?" Most guys might shrug and say, "Not much." But the man on a mission replies, "Just tightening up a few things before I launch next month. It's been intense, but I love it." That one sentence carries more attraction than 1,000 compliments. Because it's not about flexing, it's about alignment. She sees you as someone she can follow, someone she can believe in, and more importantly, someone she can't fully control. Machiavelli wrote that power belongs to those who know their purpose and pursue it with conviction, not blindly, but strategically. In relationships, this means your path must come first, not because you're cold or detached, but because the moment you make her the mission, you lose your center. And a man without a center becomes easy to manipulate, easy to discard, easy to forget. But a man anchored in something greater than attention, he becomes unforgettable. He doesn't ask to be chosen. He becomes the one who others want to align with, because he moves with purpose, and purpose is the ultimate pull. In the game of attraction, most men are trained to avoid conflict at all costs. They fear rocking the boat, fear making her uncomfortable, fear being seen as too much. But what they don't realize is, a man who avoids conflict is a man who slowly erases himself. Because when you're unwilling to speak your truth, unwilling to set boundaries, or unwilling to push back, when you're tested, you're not being respectful, you're being submissive. And submission may bring temporary peace, but it kills long-term desire. Women don't want a man who explodes at the slightest tension, but they also don't want a man who folds the second things get uncomfortable. What they crave, often unconsciously, is a man who can hold steady in the fire, who can face tension without flinching, and who chooses his battles not out of fear, but out of control. Machiavelli understood that a leader who tries too hard to be liked will eventually be crushed. The same is true in relationships, because whether you realize it or not, women will test you, not to destroy you, but to feel your edges, to see where your limits are, to know whether you'll stand up for yourself or compromise your values just to stay in her good graces. If you fail that test, she may smile on the outside, but on the inside, something shifts. She loses respect. And when respect dies, so does attraction. The man who is truly dangerous in the best sense is the one who doesn't fear conflict but isn't addicted to it either. He speaks when something matters. He stays silent when it doesn't. He's not reactive, but he's not spineless. When someone crosses a line, even playfully, he calls it out with calm authority. He doesn't yell, he doesn't perform, he simply lets the moment land. Picture this: you're with a woman and she jokes about something sensitive, maybe your ambition, your past, your masculinity. Most guys would laugh it off nervously, hoping not to seem insecure. But not you. You lock eyes steady and say, "That's not something I joke about." No anger, no apology, just clarity. That's the kind of presence that changes how people see you. Not as someone trying to keep the peace, but as someone who creates peace through strength. Because peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the mastery of it. And the man who can walk through fire without losing himself. That's the man who earns trust, commands respect, and leaves an impact that lingers long after the moment has passed. In a world where everyone is desperate to be seen, heard, and validated, the man who doesn't give his attention easily becomes powerful. Not because he's cold, not because he's playing games, but because he understands something most people never learn: attention is currency. And the more you spend it, the less it's worth. Most men throw their attention around like confetti, texting, constantly complimenting, endlessly reacting to everything she says or does. But when you become that predictable, that accessible, you fade into the background. You become noise. And in dating, as in life, what's too easy to get is even easier to forget. The man who is truly magnetic doesn't give his energy to everyone. He moves with intention. He speaks when he has something real to say. He offers validation when it's genuine, not when it's expected. And that scarcity, that discipline, makes every interaction feel more valuable. Women feel it instantly. Because unlike the men who are always available, always eager, always over-invested, you present a different rhythm. You're not rude, you're not ignoring, but you're selective. And that selectiveness sends a powerful message. My time and presence matter. That energy draws people in, not because you're trying to impress, but because you're too focused on your mission to be pulled into every distraction. Machiavelli once said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand." Translated, perception matters more than action. You don't need to chase attention to get it. You just need to appear as someone who doesn't give it away lightly. That appearance, grounded, confident reserve, triggers curiosity. And curiosity triggers pursuit. The woman who can't always predict when you'll reply, who can't fully read your next move, starts thinking about you more. She starts wondering what you're doing, who you're with, why you're not seeking her the way others do. That mystery, when paired with genuine presence, becomes unforgettable. This is not about manipulation. It's about self-respect. When you treat your energy like something valuable, people mirror that respect. And when you don't allow yourself to be pulled in every direction, you become a man who stands out. You become a man who's remembered not for how much he gave, but for how powerfully he moved, with calm, with precision, with purpose. That's what makes a man feel dangerous in the best way, not aggression, but restraint. Because in a world starving for attention, the one who controls where his goes controls the game. In a world obsessed with instant validation, loud personalities, and constant availability, the most powerful lesson from this content is simple, but life-changing. The less you chase, the more you're valued. This isn't just about dating. It's about how you carry yourself in all areas of life. Whether you're dealing with relationships, work, or social settings, your energy is your leverage. When you give it away freely, people take it for granted. But when you move with intention, when you're grounded, selective, and purpose-driven, you become someone others are drawn to, not someone they use and forget. The key is to stop seeking approval and start cultivating presence. Be the person who doesn't need to explain himself constantly. Be the one who can stay calm in conflict, who's mysterious in action and disciplined with attention. When you master your emotions, protect your time, and focus on your mission, you become rare. And in today's world, what is rare is respected. Women, bosses, friends, they don't remember the one who's always around, always agreeable, always easy to read. They remember the one who held himself with quiet strength, the one who knew his worth and didn't feel the need to broadcast it. That's not arrogance. That's self-possession. And it's one of the most attractive, powerful traits a person can develop. So whatever stage of life you're in, start applying this. Say less, mean more. Show up, but don't overgive. Be open, but never chase. Because when you become the kind of person who doesn't need to be chosen, you become the kind of person everyone wants to choose.